Okay, so I'm using the Weather API and the Spotify API, and the Weather API is it only uses a API key, whereas Spotify I had to do um, three-legged OAuth, and the Weather API is really simple. Just give it a location, and then it uses a get function to get forecast on that location. Um, and Spotify uh, grabs that information, or it gives that information back, and then it passes off the how the conditions are, like whether it's rainy or sunny or cloudy, and then it searches up playlists on Spotify based off that. So in the diagram, you start at the root of the site, and you connect to the server at the and then the server gives back a HTML form, which is just asking you to enter a location, a zip code or city. So when you fill that out, the server goes to /weather, and from there it extracts what you entered, which here is called zip code, but it could be a city too. And in this example, it's Tokyo that you entered into the form. So from there, the server does a get function to the Weather API, and it needs the API key, which is in a credentials folder in the project, and it also needs the zip code, which is the location. So it goes to the Weather API that hopefully returns okay, and then we go back to the server where it checks the state. It generates the state, and it saves the condition and other weather data. I separated the condition because that's like the main search tool, but the weather data is still important for later. And then it saves that into an array, all sessions. At that point, the there's a function that calls to start the authorization process for accessing Spotify. Right here, you need to go to the API Spotify /authorize, and there's quite a few data points that you need to put in. The response type is code because we want to code back client ID, which is the client ID of app that you made on Spotify. Scope is the permissions. I had a bunch of scopes that I got in from there. The redirect URI is like where it'll take us back to eventually after we're done with this. And it also pushes the state. And so when it does this, it takes us to the login form where you log in, and then it goes back, and then it asks for permissions from all the scopes that you specifically asked for. And then you hopefully press allow. And so that goes back to the Spotify API, which will then, with the permissions, it'll then return code, which represents the permissions that you just got. So the state. So it takes that back to the server. The server looks up the state. It just like checks it up again to make sure it's the one that we started with, with the conditions, the weather data and stuff saved in there. And then we do another post to now get the API, the authorization token that we need basically to do any kind of function of the API. So it sends that. There's a bunch of stuff. So you need the code that you just got, as well as you need the redirect URI again, but it's not going to redirect again. It's just like to check, basically. Like it's not going to redirect to that spot again. It's just to check that it's the same as was used before. In the headers, you have the client ID and the client secret. And so once you send that off, you hopefully get back the access token. And now with the access token, you're free to do anything that you have permission with. In this case, we're doing a get, which looks for playlists that are like based on the weather conditions, like I said. So like if it's sunny, it would give you a playlist like that's related to that, or if it's cloudy, it would give you like cloudy playlists, like the titles and stuff like that. Or if it's rainy or whatever. And but to get that, you the queue right here. The queue in the get function is the user input, which is the condition, the weather condition that we got from before. Type is basically to specify like what kind of search you want, whether you want to look for album songs or whatever. In this case, we want to look at playlists. And then you obviously need the access token, which was the point of all this, right? And so once that's done, the server will come back with the playlist info, and then we display it on the server. Okay, so now I'll go through the code. Okay, let's see. Right, so this is all maybe I don't explain that. So basically we start with, create a server, HTTP. We have the listeners. This list just tells us that we're connected from the console. It just tells us that we're connected to the port, the server, and whatnot. And in the listener handle right here, this is where listen is. The other one that's more important is when we get a request to the server, right? And so that opens up the request handler, which is split into a few things, right? And this is the root. In the root, we get an HTML Jesus, what's the word? Form. This is the form right here. It just asks you, it's the weather and information playlist. That's just the title. But yeah, it tells you to enter a zip code or city, and then it has the button to just to send off, right? Um, uh, right. So, right. Where is it? Where the hell? Oh. So the button um, in here basically takes you to slash weather in here, right? And then the request handler picks it up again because it's listening. And so in here, um, the whatever you typed into the place goes into the URL. So like we search the URL for it and we take it out in its zip code. This is to check that like it's not empty. And then it takes us to get forecast. And so this is the first step. And so in get forecast is where we were gonna send off the get function to get the stuff, right? The key, which is in credentials over here. This is the key for API. These other credentials are for Spotify. And so, yeah, the zip code and the key to get that. It takes us to here, which is this function process stream, which is it's from the code that you gave us. Over here, it just takes the stream and makes it into a string and gives it back. Was I right? And that process stream eventually goes back to this callback function, receive weather. And so in receive weather, we're getting back like the JSON that with all the information that we're getting back. This right here is just to check if you did something invalid, like you just back an error code basically, and this will check that. Yeah. And then if not, if it works, right, you can get the condition from the weather data. And so that takes us to the next function. You can just search weather playlists with condition, the weather data response. And so here we do the state encryption thing, and we push it into all sessions, which is an array all the way up top with the state, the weather data, the conditions. The conditions more important, so I have it separated. Whereas like the weather data is like all the other stuff that we still need, but it's not as important for like the next steps, so we can save it for later. And so that takes us to the redirect Spotify, and this is how basically I know that it's not asynchronous, right? Because you can never go to Spotify without having been through all the weather stuff first, right? And so here in Spotify, we do the authorization right here. This is the endpoint, rather. And within the endpoint, you need to add all of these parameters: the client ID, the response type, the redirect URL, which you have in the app, and where it's going to take us back eventually. The state. These are all the scopes. I can show you scopes. 1, 2, 3 different scopes I'm asking for. Show dialog is basically like this isn't necessary, but I set this true. So every time you go, it asks you for permissions explicitly, just in case. Because I didn't want it to not ask you ever, basically. Like even if you've already accepted, you just have to do it again. And so you add that to the endpoint, and then it sends you send that redirect to that place. And so that basically takes you to log in and click allow and all that jazz. And then it takes you back to the website with the response from the request handler. And yeah, so from that, like in the URL, we have to take out the info that we got, which is the code, which represents all the permissions we gave. It also gives us back the state. This right here is basically to just make sure that it's like it is a state, and it's not like we're not getting empty stuff from the state stuff. And then here we're just taking the condition and the weather data out, and I'm passing it to the next function, which is the get access token request. Here, which is the next step, right? With the code that we just got, now we can ask for the authorization token, which will give us the access to use any other like function, like get or whatever, within the Spotify API. And so yeah, so here's the endpoint for getting the token. In here we have the parent type, which is authorization code, the code, which is what we just got, the redirect URL. The redirect URL is not meant to redirect here. It's just to make sure basically that it's the same as like the last one we used from the previous function that Spotify asks for. And so here we got the rest of the stuff. So it's post method, right, and options, which is how I'm doing it. The header, which is pretty important, right? You need to do it in this encoded form, which is why I have credentials with this function right here. This is how you encode it. And so like the credentials is the client ID plus the client secret. And so you sent the request right here with the endpoint, the options, and whatnot here. And then we have this function over here, which basically takes us to process stream once again from the data that we're getting back, right? And so that right here, the callback eventually is to the receive token function. And here we can parse the JSON that we got back from this. That we got back from that, yeah. And so now we can get the actual access token. Like now we have it, and here I'm grabbing it from the JSON that was sent back, which will take us to the search song function. And so in the search song function, the user input that we've been carrying from like the weather stuff right here, we take out condition, and put in this query and type. This is just like to make it easier for when I combine. I'm gonna stringify the whole thing. And so yeah, this is like the parameters that are being put in. Limit is just like I decided to limit to 4, so it only gives us 4 playlists back max, if there is any. These are the options, which is just like the endpoint for the search, and then the header has the all-important access token. And so this is in options, and then we send the request off. Here it listens for response from the request. There's another process string, right? And then that you already know what that does. Receives Spotify requests, and then yeah, with access token. The receive Spotify request is basically this is just so this was successful, right? And so this is just getting all the JSON from the search. Here we also we finally used the weather data stuff, and this is basically a loop for each playlist that's in like the JSON stuff. Right, we would add it so like it's all together. And so it prints out with first the weather info and then however many up to 4, which is what I said on that of playlists. So yeah. Now I'm going to run this. Oh god, how am I going to capture the weather thing? Hold on. Okay, so it's running, but I can't show you. How do I show you? God. Do I do this? Okay, yeah. So here is where the local host, right? This is the start page, the root. This is the information we put. I'm going to put Tokyo, get weather. Crap, I'm already signed in. So it doesn't ask me to sign in. But here's like the permissions that you have to fill in anyway. And then yeah, it does all that. Weather info, Tokyo is partly cloudy, 33 degrees. Playlist information. So here's the first playlist. Playlist name is partly cloudy. That's why I chose it. Another one, partly cloudy. Another one. Yeah, I have this button, so it'll take you back to the root and you can start all over, basically. This is my zip code. And remember, I set it to always ask no matter what for the explicit permissions. And so Bayside is also partly cloudy. God damn it. Where would be a different version, maybe? Sunny. Okay, here we go. Sunshine mix. Sunny day. So on and so forth. Yeah. So yeah, I already explained how the first API is received. So for the second API, there's no way to reach it because of the functions. It's a nested function. As for cache, I do not have anything to do with that. So yeah, thank you.